You're good to go.
Yep. Hi, everybody. My name is Wissam Al Badri. I have the great honor introducing my really good friend and an important person that I met at SFAA and had an impact on my career, Michael Santiago. I'm going to read briefly about him. I mean, he done so many great, amazing things in the photography world, but I'm going to go through just enough to let you know who he is. Michael Santiago was born in 1980, is a staff news photographer with Getty Images. He received his B.F.A from the San Francisco Art Institute and his Master's of Science degree from Newhouse of Public, Master of Science degree from the Syracuse University. His work focuses on range of health, race, identity, family, relationship, youth empowerment, and more. So to cut it short, Michael Santiago is a Pulitzer-winning journalist. 2019, his team won the Pulitzer Prize. He also, when I was at SFAI, he was a recipient of the Alexia Great Foundation. I mean, I'm going through his right now, looking at it. A night Kerrigan Night News Fellow. To name few, Michael worked for every major magazine, newspaper in the United States,
I mean,
including,
I don't know about all that.
well, let me finish. ProPublica, the New York Times, Lynn's blog, Vice, Australia, Slate, ESPN, PBS NewsHour, the San Francisco Chronicle, Scientific America, The Guardian, BuzzFeed, um, the list goes on, Michael. So I think there is a lot of work. I know you don't like this. I know you don't like the attention. I think you're one of those people that done so much in journalism. And actually, every major news event for the past 5 years, there's always, you open the paper and there's Michael Santiago name in there. There's not an event that somehow I attend and I know you're always going to be there. So I always reach out because you're sometimes my safety net. You know, I was like, if Santiago's there and things go bad, I'm going to ask Michael for advice. So I'm really honored to be in conversation with you again. A lot of people don't know. When I first came to SFAI, a lot of people know I talk a lot and I have a big mouth, but I was really nervous and scared coming into the program because I just came from Nebraska and you were working in the DIS, that's the Digital Imaging Lab, and you were like, bro, what are you doing here? And I was like, I don't know all this stuff, and I think you spent so much time with me helping me open up Photoshop, understand how to use it, and the best thing you gave me, and I passed it down to a lot of other people, is that you like get a job here, learn from the DIS, learn that. So yeah, you did so much for me, and when I was asked to be in conversation with you, I really felt like it's an honor for me to be in conversation with you. So please tell. I mean, I'm just gonna keep it flowing. I've been your friend for a very long time, over a decade now, and we all know you as the journalist, but none of us really know how you got to this point as a journalist. Like, how did it all start for you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it all started, to be honest with you, at SFAI. I went into the program wanting to be an art photographer. That's kind of like where my head was at. Um, and I enjoyed it. I did some pretty cool things, but I kind of felt like an outsider.
Mm.
Mostly because I mean, as you know, like SFAI, there really weren't a lot of students of color there. So like a lot of things that I was working on, people weren't really relating. And I think after my first year, I wanted to leave SFAI. And Tom Semprich actually convinced me not to leave. And he told me to stick around one more year and take Darcy's class. And when I took Darcy's class, she introduced me to like another world of photography, and that was documentary photography and journalism. And I kind of just fell in love with it. I never like looked back. I think I still didn't, I still didn't know how to become a journalist because we were in an art school. And there was only so much that Darcy could teach me. And after winning the Alexia Foundation grant, that allowed me to continue my education, and I went on to go to Syracuse. And in Syracuse, I learned the pretty much core base of what it is to be a journalist. And I met a lot of different people there, networking, going to different going to different conferences and workshops and stuff like that kind of just help, hone my craft. And I think a lot of people that I've met at Syracuse allowed me to get to where I am right now. They help open doors for me. Like I worked my ass off to get where I'm at now, but I wouldn't be here had it not been for some of the folks that help open doors for me. For me to land to where I'm at right now. Um, that's kind of like in the short form, that's kind of like how the journey was from going to art school and going into journalism.
And I want to see some of your work because you brought up the Alexia Foundation grant. You were the recipient, and I think we were just all in school, and you were like that hero. I think you were like when you said people of color, you were like the first one to get like out of SFAA for us. So everybody felt like you got it for the whole team, you know. So I'm
Yeah, I
gonna
mean,
share my screen, and and I think there's something very very important I want to say is like you're always giving. I think that's something about you that I learned like right off the bat, you know, and especially for students like, you know, who just came in that we
mhm.
were like all. I mean, like country folks in a lot of way, you know. Can you see can you see this full screen? Like you
Yeah,
don't see me? And I think that was very important for us that like you really came through for a lot of us. And I think a lot of people can attest to that. Like you were that homie that came through. So
mhm.
I know this was part of your Alexia Foundation grant, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly. So if you want to just talk through a few images, like what's this image about and what's the story behind this?
yeah. So this is Mr. James McGill. He had been a farmer since like the 70s, and to this day, actually, I spoke to him like maybe about a month or so or two ago. He's always been dealing with financial problems because he can't afford to have his farm. He had a farm that he had lost in the 80s. He had it with a partner, and they went into a handshake deal with somebody, and they reneged on that deal, and he lost the farm. This is his family property that they've always had in California, and I don't exactly remember how much they originally started with, but it's less than half of the land is still left. He's still dealing with tax issues. He still has dreams of going out and having all this land and continue his farming and having like acres of land. And he's now like reaching his 80s, and um yeah, I mean, I was fortunate to meet him, and I spent a good amount of time, maybe like 2 years, photographing him. Um, he's a pig farmer. That's all he's ever done. That's all he knows, and that's all he wants to do until like he's not here anymore.
And this is yeah, speaking
Yeah,
of
this
that.
this is another farmer, Miss Shirley. She's actually a little bit better off because she has a good amount of land, and she leases part of that land to grape farmers. Um, but I mean, I don't know. Miss Shirley was a character. She was great to be
Yeah.
around.
What
It was definitely kind of like night and day between her situation and Mr. McGill's situation.
yeah,
She has pigs and goats.
yeah,
The last time I spoke to her, this maybe about like almost 10 years. So I'm not sure what she's doing now.
yeah,
But she was a real big advocate of having more black farmers in California, especially women farmers, since she's a woman farmer.
yeah.
Um, and she got her nephews and her nieces into farming, but she never really thought that they would take over the farm once she's done with it.
And I think I seen this at the Diego Rivera in school. I think when you did the
Yeah, this is Teddy. Teddy actually unfortunately passed away a few years ago, which is really, really sad and unfortunate because he was still, you know, still he's still pretty young, but he passed away a few years ago. This is a project that I started in SFAI on African American and Native identity. And he was one of the first people I met and photographed for this project, and he was like so chill, super on board. Um, this I was fortunate enough that day, like he took the time out to come out to the fields with us, dressed in his regalia. He had just come out of dialysis, and I'm not sure if anybody knows what dialysis is like, but it really takes a toll on you and drains your energy. And like he was so dedicated to us working on this project that he pushed through. Um, so when I found out that he had passed away last year, it just kind of broke my heart. Um, this is like one of my favorite photos, and like this captured who Teddy was, just the intensity in his eyes. Yeah, this is one of those things that I wish I would have been able to continue doing. I traveled to DC for this project. I traveled to Arizona for this project. And unfortunately, it never really took off the way that we wanted to, and kind of put it on the back burner just because we couldn't afford to travel anymore. Um, Hopefully, like at some point I'll get back into it.
And I think this is Miss Shirley again.
Yeah, it's Miss Shirley again. All that in the back is all grapes, table grapes.
Yep.
Some of the best grapes I've ever tasted in my life.
Yeah.
Um, every time I go out to a farm, she would just have like bags of grapes for me.
Beautiful. And I'm gonna go through a few images. I think you gotta tell me the story behind this.
Yeah, man. Like so this is the traditional Diablo Cojuelo costume. For the Dominican Republic for Carnival. A lot of countries in the West Indies and Latin American countries that have a carnival, and this is kind of what we dress up as during that time of year. Um, and I met a group out here in New York. Whenever you see these guys in New York or anywhere kind of in the States, it's the same as that group that travel the country doing with these costumes performing for people. And I wanted to do a project on them and do portraits of all the group members and follow them around. But unfortunately, when I started this, I ended up moving to Pittsburgh, and I kind of lost touch with everybody, and kind of just dropped off. Um, but I'm back in New York, so hopefully at some point I'll be able to pick up on this again.
I'm gonna share a few of them.
And this is going back to the black farmers. This is Julius Tillery. He's a sixth generation cotton farmer out of North Carolina. And his great 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 grandfather. Um, I want to say that he's the first Tillery born out of slavery, who basically just amassed a good amount of land in North Carolina. They've expanded and just they have like this whole cotton fields out there, and that's pretty much what they grow. Um, But the thing is with cotton is that, for a lot of these small farmers, they don't make enough money on their own, so they have to start collectives.
Mm,
And that's pretty much how they make the money. At the same time, it's just not sustainable for everybody. So a lot of people have to run their farms and do other jobs. Um, and Julius is cool because like he wants to call I don't know, it's the wrong time to say it, but when I met him, he said that he wanted to be the Puff Daddy of the cotton industry. I don't know if he wants to call himself that now. He might want to just think about something else.
yeah.
But he started a clothing line,
Mm,
using the cotton from his fabrics. He also makes home decor with the cotton as well. But he wants to try to change the narrative around cotton and African Americans in this country.
mm. And it is a large industry.
Yeah,
But
I
you
I
said
mean it is,
yeah,
but for smaller farmers like him and a lot of other folks in North Carolina where he's from,
yeah,
like they gotta battle larger farmers and large corporations and people
yeah,
who are farming, overseas where the majority of the cotton is, going.
yeah.
Um, it's not sustainable for them, unfortunately.
And how much of your work focuses on like families and social issues? Because I know you have a very extensive body of work, but how
Mm.
much of it would you focus, say, your project focus on family issues, family dynamic, and like in a way like social justice, I would say.
Yeah, I mean a lot of it does. I mean, it's quite different now that where I'm at right now. You know, I work for Getty Images, which for those who aren't familiar, it's a wire agency or a picture agency. So I cover a lot of news, specifically here in New York, but also nationally.
Mhm.
Um, so it's quite different than me working on projects on my own or working for a local newspaper at like when I worked in Pittsburgh, it was totally different. You know, I was able to just focus on the city itself, and not have to think about things that are being nationally. So it was a lot easier to come up come up and do projects that focused on family and community, because it was just so localized. But now, since I work more on like on a national stage, sometimes it could be a little bit difficult to do. But I do my best. I try when I can. But obviously, like everybody knows what the last few years has been like. So
Yeah,
a lot of my focus has been on politics.
yeah. And we
Um,
gotta go to that because I like,
yeah,
yeah, as I said earlier, that literally there is not every other day or something, when you go online to read a newspaper, there's Michael Santiago, and there's always a Trump image, and you know what I mean. And like
yeah,
it seems like you're one of the most Odyssey probably photographed mostly by you. And I think because of New York, what's happening in New York is like you're
yeah,
always, or the United Nations conferences, so, and that's very powerful. Like that's something, a lot of people, a lot of young journalists wish to do,
mm,
looking back, like that was your big thing. Like when you left SFAI, for me. And when you moved, I think you went back to New York. Yes, you went back to New York. Then you got a job at Pittsburgh, um,
hmm
and that's where you received your Pulitzer. And I visited you a few times out there. I needed a place to crash, um, and you were just working around the clock there too. Like there is nothing happening in that. Um, but it's beautiful. Like you got to see your dream come true. You got
yeah,
like you basically get to the like you achieved it. And a lot of artists, sometimes it's very difficult, but I think, and there gotta be an advice segment at the end of this, like what I will come up to that. So what's the story behind these?
yeah, man. So like at one point, I really, like a lot of people, I really wanted to be a music journalist, a music photographer.
Yeah.
Um, and like one day out of the blue, I got a call to if I wanted to photograph an up and coming music artist. And I knew who this artist was, and I was like, hell yeah, I do this. And like I honestly thought that this was gonna be a cover story. I honestly thought like this is gonna like this photo right here is gonna like like blow up and throw me into that world. But unfortunately the story never ran. I don't know why it didn't run. I mean, I have my suspicions of why it didn't run. I'm not gonna say, but it didn't run. And unfortunately, like for people who don't recognize this artist, this is Bad Bunny, who's like now like one of the biggest musicians in the world right now. Who just dropped the album yesterday. If you guys haven't heard it yet, go listen to it because it's fire.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, man, like he's like one of the biggest artists in the world right now, and I knew it once I met him. I had already always already familiar with him. I heard his music before, but once I met him, I'm like, damn, like this dude got it. He's gonna blow up. And I honestly really thought that this would kind of like just throw me into that world. And unfortunately, the story never ran. But like, it's still like one of a prideful moment. Like, I was able to photograph this dude that nobody at that time really knew, and now he's like one of the biggest artists in the world.
Yeah.
Um, so at least I can say that.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump into this image because I think this is the most memorable image I know of your work, uh,
Mhm.
from SFAI. um
Yeah, this is at the farm.
yeah.
And I don't know if how many people have been on farms, but a lot of times like they burn their own garbage out there, and this is pretty much what was happening. And this is one of those things where like a lot of people sometimes when they're photographing, they close one eye and just use one eye to photograph. And one thing that Darcy always emphasized with us when you photograph, keep both eyes open because you don't know what you don't. There's something on the side of the frame that's happening that you're not going to see if you have
Yeah.
your eyes closed. And that's kind of like what happened here. I was photographing something else, but my left eye caught Mr. McGill walking through in front of the sun, silhouetting with the smoke, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And I just kind of shifted my focus to that, and I don't know, like if in film talk, I exposed maybe like two rolls of film just to get this one image right here.
Yeah.
So it's like that's like what 32 plus 30, whatever that is, 64 frames roughly on this. So 64 frames and a lot of inhaling smoke while I was doing this. Um and I think that's one thing that I mean you talked about the advice later on, but I'll say it now is a lot of times like when you're photographing something, whatever you're photographing should lead you to more pictures. A lot of times, and I see this. I mean, I do this myself sometimes still, but I see a lot of times people who are out there photographing, they take one image of something and they move on to something else right away. You got to just pretty much stay there and keep photographing. Like something's gonna happen. One picture should lead you to more 4 or 5 more pictures.
Yeah.
Where you're at. And this was just one of those times.
I mean, I always enjoyed, like I said, coming to the DIS and just seeing your
Mm.
work there, um, because literally you were there for all. You know what I mean? Like you were just showing work, giving advice. Because I think we were all incoming, and you were like on your way out the door. So I think you already been through it, like you understand. Because I think yeah, after you received your Alexia Foundation grant, or you were the recipient of that award, I
Mhm.
think you graduated like that semester right after.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and what the story behind this?
Yeah, so this is actually going into my work with Getty, and this was during John when John Lewis passed away. They had pretty much a really huge homegoing for him. Started in Montgomery and Selma. And John Lewis, he civil rights icon and somebody that I really, really wanted to photograph while he was alive. But unfortunately I didn't get a chance to, but I was there for his homegoing. And this image right here, it's kind of like for me one of the most powerful images from that day. Because you have the state troopers who are there saluting his casket as it's being driven by, and they're all black state troopers. And if you know about John Lewis, he was one of the people who was almost killed during the March on Montgomery and Selma, and trying to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge. He was beaten and almost killed by white state troopers. Um, and all the red that you see on the ground here, those are rose petals, and that signifies the blood that was spilled on that day, which is called Bloody Sunday. So they laid the bridge with rose petals as he was being taken through on the way to Montgomery.
And I know you worked on this. I think I seen this as well. The most deaf. I know it's Yassine Bey now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but I think
this goes back to like the hip hop work that I wanted to do.
yeah,
Yassine is one of my favorite musicians, and I'm thankful that he like I had gone to his show the day before, and he was just like, yeah, don't worry about it. Tomorrow we'll get up and you can photograph me. And I didn't think it was gonna happen.
yeah,
And then he gave us a call, and we ended up spending 4 hours with him. And it's probably like one of the best 4 hours of my life.
yeah.
Like he's one of the most chill person I've ever met. He's super funny. Um, and one of the best experiences I've had trying to get into that music world.
Yeah. Because you done so many projects. Like I think you just what it got you today. I think is like and I want to get to that later because you worked on so many projects. I think there can be like a big old, I would say a laundry list of just how many projects you worked on and body of works you have completed. So
Mhm.
you've been doing this for a very, very long time. And I know this is your family story. And I know you had a very beautiful, powerful relationship with your father. And I know this work it hits you in the heart. So I, yeah, I would like to know a little bit about this because I know I think I saw this when you were leaving SFAI.
Yeah, I wanted to photograph my, when I left New York and moved to California for school, I already knew that my father had cancer. So, when I would go back home, like photographing him was a way for me kind of like, I guess not only to hone my skill as a photographer, but also is a way for me to spend time with them and document the time that I have with them while I'm home. And it just turned into like the whole 4 year journey photographing him. Yeah, just photograph. I mean, photograph. I photographed him like I photographed him while he was dying in the hospital. I photographed his wake. I photographed the funeral. Um, and it was probably like one of the toughest things I did. Like looking back, when I look back at these images, like I'm glad that my family has all these photographs of my father, and everybody gets to see that I had those memories of him, and they're in the photos with them. But at the same time, I think about the one person who's missing in all these photos, and that's me. Like I don't have a lot of photos of me and my dad because I was always behind the camera. Um, so that kind of sometimes like it hits me, but at the same time like like my niece right here, Emma, she was like super young when my dad, and they were like best friends, and like now she has all these photos of my dad and her, and that's because I took them. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't want to start crying, so you know what I mean. But I mean, I definitely fortunate that that my parents were open to having a camera in their face throughout this time because we have like a real good amount of memories of him.
I mean, it's one of the most beautiful essays on a father and and son, you know,
Mhm.
um, and like, and I know it's, but so
Yeah, and
you are kind
yeah, I mean the cool, not the cool thing, but like, the cool thing is like um I had shopped this story around to a lot of people, and everybody would never bite on it. And thankfully, the year he passed away, that Father's Day, an editor reached out to me from Slate, and
of,
Slate actually ran a piece on him. So like I'm glad that he was able to see it published and get out to the world before he passed away. Um, and it's funny because he was like, now, not when he got published, he was like, all right, where's my paycheck now?
yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, but I mean that I think it's documenting family and stuff because you're preserving history, you know,
Yeah.
giving something to your niece. And I want the viewers to understand that or the people following this conversation is not an art talk, it's not the isms and all of that. This is like really hearing a journalist talk about the work he does. So I think sometimes people expect these conversations to be very cerebral, you know, and all of
No, but
that.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit because this is the trouble I had at SFAI too,
Yeah,
because a lot of people just don't see my work as art
yeah,
because it's journalism. Like,
yeah,
why can't it be art?
yeah. I mean, who gets to decide what art is?
I mean, exactly.
You know, so
Huh?
you know, but for me, it's like sometimes when I've been talking, I was like, I just want to speak to you as a human, and I think this project is one of them beautiful ones that like you know it resonates with everybody. It resonates, you know, with telling family stories, and it resonates with us trying to prove to our families sometimes that we are journalists working because you know you have to fit certain jobs and
Yeah.
and as a
And
journalist
at some point, I will finally put it together and update it on my website. But honestly, like it's been I think going on like 7 years, and I still can't go back and look at those images. Like, I remember not that long ago, somebody wanted to publish this, and they were like, "Oh, we want to publish it." And I asked them, like, do you need, the images of the funeral stuff like that? They were like, "Yeah," and I'm like, I passed. I was like, "No, I can't do it."
yeah,
That was like 4 years ago,
yeah,
and I still can't go back and look at those photos. So like, they're still sitting on the hard drive. And at some point. I guess, at some point I'll go through it, and I'll do it. Maybe
mm,
therapy one day, will help me, finally come to terms with what happened, and I'll finally get, wrap this up,
Yeah.
but we'll see someday.
Yeah. What's ha
So this is
so
these are a few images from when I worked in Pittsburgh for
yeah,
the Tree of Life mass shooting.
yeah,
This is the FBI and ATF and local officials looking through the person who did it, the shooter's house. The crazy thing about this is that we when we had that the person's address before anybody else did. So I showed up to to the house before FBI and cops were even there. I mean, they didn't show up to like 2 hours. I don't want to say 2 hours, but they showed up a while after I showed up, and I'm like, I mean, this is the dude's house, and I'm here, and there's nobody else here. Um, and I ended up spending the entire day outside that house. Um, this was a pretty crazy day. I live about half a mile from the synagogue, and when I saw the alerts come through on my phone that there was a shooting, I thought it was just like a normal shooting, and then it registered that nah, this is like a mass shooting, and I was running around my apartment like a chicken with no head. I didn't know what to do. I was looking. I knew it was gonna be a long day, so I was trying to pack my bag with extra cameras and all my lenses. Um, and since I lived so close to the synagogue, I was on my way to the synagogue. And my editor called me. He was like, "Nah, we have like three people there. This is where you're gonna go. Go somewhere else." And we went. And I ended up going to this pretty much tracking down the person's house. And that was probably like the longest few months I had working that. Not just longest, but to date, that was one of the hardest things that I've worked on. Um, Photographing, the death of people, especially in tragedy like this, it's absolutely not something that's easy. People don't want you there. They don't want you in your faces. Think you're being, we are being intrusive. This is probably, the worst days that people are have had, and we unfortunately have to be there. So this was really tough to work on. Unfortunately, this isn't the only mass shooting that I've worked on. I've had to cover others, but this was the first one that I had to cover.
and can you I know you talk about the tree of life. Can you explain a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah, man. I mean, there was a gentleman who was pretty much radicalized um, on the internet, and he believed that people of Jewish faith were pretty important illegal aliens illegal immigrants into America, and unfortunately targeted people of Jewish faith because of it. It's just because he was radicalized on the internet by all the rhetoric of um the rhetoric of illegal immigration, and what's it's doing to our country, which is obviously all false. I don't know, it's tough. We're living in tough times, man.
Yeah. And
This is probably one of my favorite things that I got to work on in Pittsburgh. I got to cover the last year of two students at the senior years of two students. And I spent the entire year, like I went to prom with them. I went to their classes. I visited their homes. I went to their football games. I went to their jobs. And it was amazing. Like Rasan actually sent me a message a few months ago, and he's now a dad. Still working. One of the coolest kids that I met in my time in Pittsburgh. Um, I'm- and that's that kind of thing that I miss about working in local news, is that the community that you meet there. Like the community is so tight knit, and you meet a lot of different folks who all know each other. Um, so it was really. And as bad as my time in Pittsburgh ended, I really had a good time there and photographing the community. And like I spent a lot of time in Braddock, which is one of the most underserved communities in Pittsburgh.
I think, oh, that's an
That's
image.
also from the Tree of Life.
Yeah. And now politics cover. So so you get into Getty Images, and
Mhm.
for people, I mean, it's one of the what four major wire agencies in the world.
Mhm.
I mean, like you cannot. I mean, it's like a household name brand in the news industry. And I think when I found out you got there, I think you shared it with me, and it was like we were happy because it's a big deal, like to get into Getty because it's not that much they need folks. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, turnover there, but because once you're there, it's like you basically made it to the Olympics team, I would say. You know,
Yeah, I mean, basically.
yeah, because now you get to cover anywhere, everywhere. So tell me about your experience there and tell me about all the politics because then you go in covering local politics to high profile politics all across
Yeah.
the country and specifically New York. I was
Yeah.
seeing a lot of that in DC.
I mean, the good thing that about working with Getty is that I cover just strictly news, and I really love working in news. I do miss covering sports sometimes, and doing some other things, but I really do enjoy covering news, and I really do enjoy covering politics. It's one of my favorite things to cover. Especially during campaign seasons, it's that whole campaign season. It's different than covering politicians at at the White House or at the Capitol or at City Hall and stuff like that. Politicians out, out in the real world interacting with people. This is during the 9/11 memorial this past year. And this was, I believe, a day or two after the debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And this was the first time that they were all photographed together. When I found out that this was my assignment, that was going to be like there. I mean, obviously, I was kind of stoked because, like I said, this was the first time all four of these people were photographed together. Um,
And Bloomberg is in the middle, right?
yeah, man. Bloomberg is in the middle. Messed up quite a few of my shots that day. Not shots photographed because I hate saying, we're photographers. We take photographs, not we don't take shots. But obviously, everybody really wanted to see the photograph of Donald Trump shaking Joe Biden's hand and Kamala Harris's hand. And Bloomberg just got right in the middle of all of that. So, and that's the thing when you're out photographing, like you don't know what's gonna happen. Like,
No.
and I would say that's the biggest difference between like making this kind of work and like doing art. I don't want to say art like as a bad thing, but like when you're making art imagery, like you have control everything that happens. When you're
Yep.
working in news, you have no control over what
No.
happens. But you have to be ready and prepare and move around and do different things.
Yep.
Um, and when you're covering like the president and vice president, sometimes that like it's difficult because you got to deal with Secret Service. You can't go to certain places. Um, I mean, there's been times where I've had Secret Service is like, yo, like, what are you doing here? You can't be over here. And it's like, you're paranoid because you got to get a lens and the lens is in your bag and you got to go in your bag and the president in front of you and you're opening a bag and Secret Service is looking at you. What are you doing? What are you getting out of that bag? And you got to do this shit slowly.
Yep.
And like, it's super quiet and you drop something and everybody's looking at you like, God, so like it can be stressful at times.
Yep. It is stressful. I mean, I don't wish it because I see you guys working there when I was covering like DNC or NC, and
Mhm.
but you are absolutely right. Like documentary photographers or other photographers, we have the freedom sometimes to do a portrait, like because we don't have, and people don't know, like you have a turnaround time within an hour or even less. I remember um, people were running. It was the DNC, they were running, and the Secret Service decided to close off these two sides of the and the filing room was in the back of it, right? So when they closed it off, people were crying, screaming. I mean, some journalists, young ones, because they said our job is on the line. We have to submit now, you
Yeah.
know. And some people don't understand. Like your turnaround time is minutes. Like not
Mhm.
because like they say, news don't wait.
Yeah.
You know, even though like I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I don't even envy those folks because it takes a whole different commitment to
Yeah.
time,
And
and
then we were
responsibility.
talking offline before about photographing and raw and JPEG. That's kind of like why I had to switch to JPEG because a lot
Yep.
of the stuff it's has to be immediate. So
Yeah.
like I had to get like really good at, making sure all my settings are right. And the thing is like, when you're working in these environments, you're doing math in your head. Like you got to think about, which camera you're going to use, what lens you're going to use because different lenses give you different, different looks.
Perspective.
You
Yep.
got to think about your lighting. You got to think about your shutter speed. You got to think about your f-stop and how you want your images to look like. And you got to get in position. You got to frame it right. You got to make sure you have the right light. And all of that is going through your head. And it's like you're thinking so much and people think that our job is just it's easy, all we got to do is go out and snap a picture and like nah, like it's mental gymnastics and it's
Yep.
mentally draining a lot of times.
Yep.
Besides it being physical, carrying everything, it's mentally draining, and I think a lot of people don't think about that.
Yeah, it's stress. I mean, it's literally constant stress to get that image, because
Mm.
if I recall, we're like the foot soldiers in reality, or journalists in general.
I
Uh,
like that. So
yeah,
just
because because in those events there was a hierarchy,
yeah,
but like the news media in the sense of like broadcasting, they all have the top, and you see like and I can say like what's his name, like all the famous journalists, from CNN, they have like their booths on top and CNBC and Fox, and they have catering and they have coffee and water. And like, they're basically on the boxes, right? Like looking down, they get to see everything. And they have like a 15 to 30 other journalists writing for them as they go, right?
mhm.
And we're in the bottom, like squeezed together, no water, no food,
Surviving off like nuts and like fucking
yeah,
morning
and
bars and
yeah,
stuff.
and you're getting yelled at all the time. And it's not the Secret Service usually doing the yelling, it's the volunteers, they get this power trip, Um, then you like, man, and then there's like people don't realize your image is the one running to the paper the next day, you
Yeah.
know, and the importance of it. Sometimes I think it just skewed like what it is. I love this image right here.
Yeah,
All right, so
that
I'm gonna go through few, um, and I just want
we're running out of time to just run through the images
yeah,
quick, whatever. And you want to talk about one, you can,
yeah.
whatever you want to do.
Oh, you got you got Trump and Kid Rock, and this image right here. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, man, this was last year at the beginning where students were pretty much starting encampments at the universities for to bring attention to the genocide in Gaza.
Yeah.
And this was at NYU. Um, I think the students had been there all day, and towards the end of the day, they were getting threatened with
Mhm.
with the rest, and the teachers showed up. And when it was time to pray, the teachers pretty much held hands and were protecting the students as they prayed.
Wow.
They didn't last the night, unfortunately. By the end of the night, they got booted from the plaza.
Yeah. This is the powerful image.
Yeah. So oh Jesus, I'm blanking on the girl's name right now.
Yeah.
But it's his brother, Jeremy. The photo, they're
Yeah.
twins, and the year before, I want to say it's the year before he was murdered.
Yeah.
And that's her older brother. So like she carried that his photo throughout her senior year. During prom, during graduation, she walked with this photo because he was supposed to graduate with her also.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like when I was photographing them, when she walked and got her diploma, her older brother who was driving the car, he started crying.
Yeah.
And then the younger brother started crying. And then I started crying. And their mom looks at us like she's like, I'm not even crying. Why are you guys crying? Stop crying. You're gonna make me cry. And it was one of those things. And then like, we all hugged and stuff. And it's one of those things that, like a lot of times like yes, we are journalists and we're not supposed to be, we're not supposed to involve ourselves with the people we photograph, but at the same time, we're all humans.
Yep.
and connecting with the people you're photographing as humans, it means a lot to them because like like I said before, like we're entering people's lives sometimes at the worst part of their lives, and we had to think about that. What if it was us? And we can't take, I can't be in this work and not be human.
Yep.
Um, that would have been a great photo of me to get, everybody, everybody hugging each other, crying as she's walking through a diploma. But I missed it because I'm a human and I went and I was brought into that hug.
Yep.
Like, and to this day, like I can be in I could be in Pittsburgh and I could call them up and I could come over and have dinner with them.
Yep.
Uh,
And I
it's
think
it's
that's
it's one of those friendship things that
yep.
one of the bonds that you build in this
Yep.
industry.
I think from you, and I use that in my practice, but in particular, you don't never refer to you specifically as well, that you don't prefer to people as subjects. You prefer to them
I mean,
as people.
we're not kings. We're
Yeah.
not kings,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
We don't rule people.
No.
Um, I mean that for me, I think when you're taking somebody's humanity and agency away when you're calling them subjects.
Yep. And you don't give them a name because then you control the narrative. It's
Yeah.
like as and I think I always had, but even like hearing you speak, like, you know, it's love for people because in a way it's like, and I think journalism need that more than ever now. I know it's like, I have my issues with it, but I think there is like journalists like you working in the field that is like, people names, you have relationship with people, you still like, going up to dinner. I can only count maybe a handful of journalists that could do that because the rest is like the industry doesn't allow them, or they try to detect. It's like this John Wayne mentality. Like if you want to be a shooter, you have to be a certain way. And I think it's like it's wrong because you bring in your style, you bring in your humanity, you bring in your compassion, you bring empathy into this work. And this is beautiful. I love this. And I know you're a parent now too. So and it's like your love for that work transition into this image. Linda Connor would love this. We should make her a print and send it.
Yeah, man, like this day he definitely wasn't like, like I pretty much covered all the trials here in New York that he had. And he would have different moods, and one day he'd be happy and jolly, another day he would just not be happy at all. And this is one of those days where he was not happy. Um and like this is also one of those times where Secret Service had no say into what we were doing. So this is like took advantage of the fact that we could be this close to him, and like literally like as far away from my computer that I am, that's how
Yeah.
far away I was from him when I was
Wow.
taking the photo.
Wow. I mean, it's powerful. We're coming to the end. I want to leave an open, and I think I've seen this
If
in
you
the
want, I
news.
mean, you could just go through the rest of the image, and anybody has any questions, we could just
Yeah.
roll that through
Yeah.
there right now.
Yeah. I think this is a beautiful. I'm gonna stop. I think yeah, we pretty much ran through the images. I love the look. And so yeah, I'm gonna open it for people. I know a lot of folks are here. Linda, your print will come in the mail soon. So yeah, I think there's questions in the chat too. Um,
Yeah, there's one question from Eve Werner I can read for you. Has the advice to look with both eyes while shooting and allow the pictures you're taking lead you to more pictures affected wider aspects of your professional, personal life? What you mentioned earlier.
Um, I would say yes because I was aware that I was being shot at by cops or being hit by batons, keeping my eyes open, especially like, when you're out there photographing like protests, isn't especially one of those times where you have to keep both eyes open because you don't know what's coming to your right. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's allowed me to not get shot or hit by batons.
Are there any other questions? You can either put them in the chat or also speak up. April has a question. Go ahead, April.
What's up, Michael? How you doing? I have a question for you. So you went to art school. So I'm curious, are you working in any other mediums? Want to work in any other mediums?
Um, Not really. I'm collecting rocks. That's kind of the only other thing I'm doing that it's artsy. Um, like it's tough now because my brain is always turned on to news because I have to know what's going on at all times. As with Sam mentioned, also I'm also a dad, so I have a 3-year-old. And if anybody has lived with a 3-year-old, they know what that's like. Um, so I mean, it's tough for me to do anything. Um, I'm coloring in color books and collecting rocks.
Okay.
We have time for maybe two or three questions.
Mike,
Linda, go.
hi,
Hello,
Michael. It's
how
so
are
good to
you?
see you again. It's been years, but
Wow.
I remember talking to you about Syracuse.
Mhm.
And when I think we were up in that little classroom, the up above 16, and I'm just so blown away with all the work that you've managed to do. I've heard from Wassam, of course, that you're you know, top of the game now, but congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
And your pictures, there are some, think about Cartier-Bresson.
Mhm.
And, he was art and life are don't have to be that far apart.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We have another question by Carly. Do you feel compromised when covering a story? Do you get pushed to tell a certain story you don't want to tell? Also, how do you take care of yourself while photographing horrific events? Thanks, Carly.
Um, I think I think I have a more of a luxury now where I am at Getty, where if I'm asked to cover something and I just don't feel right about doing it, I can say that I don't want to cover that. Or if I'm somewhere and I just don't feel comfortable, I can be like, I call my editors like, hey, like I don't feel comfortable being here. I already got some stuff. Can I take off? And thankfully, I work with editors who are super understanding and understand it and get it. Um, but working at the newspaper, I don't. It was harder. It was harder there for me to say I'm not. I can't do this. I'm not doing that. Um, and how do I take care of myself? I'm in therapy now. So that's kind of the advice I have. I'm finally getting out years and years of trauma that I've taken in, and I'm starting to get that out. I knew that it was starting to affect me. And it was ruining my moods. It was making me a pretty irritable person. Literally like a couple of weeks ago, my therapist was like, dude, you got PTSD, man. I'm like, yeah, I know. And finally somebody's acknowledging that. Um, so yeah, man, like if you're doing this kind of work, trauma therapy or getting therapy is kind of great. And like I'm not somebody who talks easily.
Mm.
So like doing this was rough. Um, but I knew it was something that I needed to do. I mean, prior to me even doing this, like I did the typical journalist thing where, I leaned into alcohol and I was drinking a lot. Um, but I don't drink that much anymore. But therapy, talking, and
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be a therapist. You could just talk to your friends. Talk. That's kind of how you deal with it.
We have one question by Jack Bowers. What do you foresee? Well, that's kind of like a difficult one. What do you foresee coming up? Are you following politics and expect tension evolving in the public?
I don't know. People are tired.
Mhm.
I could tell you that right now. People are tired. So I don't know what's gonna happen. Um, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I mean, I'm a journalist, so I got to be prepared for whatever happens, I don't know. I can't foresee what the next few years or 4 years are going to look like. I just know that I'll be there.
You can be nice.
But
Yeah,
I'm not. I see something about the inauguration. I'm not covering the inauguration. By the way, somebody had asked. But I am gonna be. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be somewhere next week. Covering politics, but I'm not gonna be at the moment. I'm not gonna be at the inauguration.
right. Maybe one last question, if anyone wants to unmute themselves, and then we're gonna end the recording, and then you can all say goodbye after the recording is over.
I have one quick question. Wassam, will you be at the inauguration?
I
Oh,
say I'm like fly on shit. Sorry, but I love drama. So I did reach out to Michael, and he's like, nah, because he can do whatever he want. But I was like, oh yeah, I'll be there. And I heard April might be there too. But I
I
told
already
people,
got my ticket.
yeah. But I was like, April, stay away from me. Yeah.
All
No, but
right,
we'll be
well,
there. I think there's gonna be a lot of great people there. And I think yeah, it's interesting.
Mm.
Yeah,
Bravo.
but I think I don't know what's gonna turn out to be. But I think a lot of the time as photographers, I'm literally there for my images. I know I don't want to like it sounds selfish, but it's like that's all you have the experience and you want to walk away with the images you made that day. I hope Daniel, you're gonna be out there.
No, I will not be there. What's up, Michael? How you doing, man?
What's going on, brother? Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. I guess I got one question for you. It seemed your spirit when you were talking about photographing musicians, there's like an energy to you that's excited about that. Is that something that you can pursue on your own?
I mean, it's tough. I was doing it on my own.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to get a hold of some of these artists
Yeah.
sometimes, or even get into their lives. I mean,
Right.
I pitched, like I wanted, some of my favorite images from back in the day from photojournalists was like, the gritty jazz photo scene, photo
Yeah.
images and like that. Like I really wanted to do like that kind of like photojournalism with artists, and I was pitching it to the New York Times, the music publications,
Yeah.
but nobody was biting on it. And
Yeah.
it's tough now, especially like with social media, because like a lot of these musicians, they are their own media and they put their lives out there like that. Um, but I mean, I honestly, I really, really would still love to do that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
I mean, there's a gritty jazz scene in New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
And
mean, but it's more than just like, like be, capturing musicians on stage. Is, I want to do more than
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Do side of, like, I have like this one, like dream that one day like Jay-Z is gonna hit me up and like, hey, spend a year with me as I record this next
Right.
album, stuff like
All
that.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of stuff. Like I would love to do something like that.
Yeah. I hope it happens for you.
Yeah, man. Like,
Yeah.
like I remember like one of my favorite musicians was Rhapsody.
Yeah.
When Rhapsody was nominated for her first Grammy,
Yeah.
I pitched the story like, hey, like let me spend a day with her while she gets prepared for her first Grammy, and like nobody's really wanted to do that. And I'm like, come
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Some
got my
point,
fingers crossed for you on that, man.
hopefully.
That would be
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
all
thank you
right,
so
everyone.
much,
Yeah.
for taking the time. I know a lot of us know you, but we don't know like what goes behind the scene because you're always working. I mean, there's not a single day you're not out there photographing or doing something. So I'm glad we got to see your work. We got to hear about you and learn more about you. And thank you for opening up about therapy because a lot of artists and journalists need to do that. But I think hearing you, I'd be like, ooh, what? It's not a bad idea. So,
Especially you, bro. You definitely need therapy, man.
but But yeah, but hopefully
You'll blow his mind.
Yeah, I know. You know me, I've got to try to convince my therapist to do a project on them, you know.